I am going to be a millionaire by 32. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like every other overconfident claim you have heard on the internet from someone trying to sell you something. But I want to be really clear. I am not here to sell you a course or a shortcut or a mindset hack. What I'm going to share with you in this video is coming from three places: my own personal experience, what has worked for me, and what has completely failed. The lessons I have taken from reading the books of some of the most respected money and business thinkers in the world, and psychological research on how the human brain actually relates to money and decision making. I will also share later in this video how one of these principles made me $40,000 better off in the space of a single hour. So let's get into it. The first thing I am doing to get to that $1 million mark is building what I call an all-weather portfolio. And this idea starts with a really honest realization I had a few years ago that you will never get wealthy from wages alone. Wages grow linearly. The amount you earn is directly tied to the number of hours you work. There is a hard ceiling on that. And on top of that, wages are fragile. The moment you stop working, whether you choose to or someone else makes that choice for you, that income stream disappears completely overnight. What I realized is that building real wealth means building income streams that do not require you to trade your time for every single dollar. Passive income, and I mean genuine passive income, not the fantasy version people sell online, has the potential to grow non-linearly. Because once you get one stream running on autopilot, it does not stop when you clock off. It keeps compounding in the background while you sleep, while you work, while you build the next one. And that is the point. Each stream you get to autopilot frees up your time and your focus to build the next one. And then the next. That is how income compounds. Not by working harder, but by working in a way that multiplies. The second thing I am doing is training myself to think in first principles. I first came across this concept in an interview with Elon Musk, and it genuinely changed how I approach almost every decision I make. The idea is simple but radical. Just because something has always been done a certain way does not mean it is the right way. And it definitely does not mean it is the best way available to you. I spent years being told in banking, by people I respected, that certain things were not possible, that the way things worked was the way things had to work. And every single time I pushed back on that assumption, I either found a better solution or at minimum forced myself to think harder and come out with a stronger plan. The pushback itself was valuable. Think about what first principles thinking actually produces at its most extreme. Someone decided they could build rockets and send them to Mars. Someone else looked at a piece of aluminium and decided they could get it to fly through the air. At the time, both of those things sounded completely unreasonable, and both of them changed the world. The point is not that you need to build rockets. The point is that the world does not offer outsized returns to people who serve up more of the same. You cannot get extraordinary results from ordinary thinking, and the people who build real wealth, not just comfortable wealth, but generational wealth, are almost always the ones willing to question the assumptions that everyone else takes for granted. The third thing, and this is the one that directly put $40,000 back in my pocket, is learning to leverage other people's strengths. There is a saying that if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. For a long time, I genuinely believed I could figure most things out on my own, that asking for help or paying for expertise was a sign of weakness or a waste of money. I was wrong about that in almost every possible way. Here's exactly what happened. I had purchased a property under a company structure and needed to move it into a different company. When I looked into the process, I realized I was facing around $30,000 in various taxes to make that transfer happen. I spent hours trying to research my way out of it, reading, Googling, looking for loopholes, and getting nowhere. A friend eventually looked at me and said, "Just talk to a tax advisor." That is literally what they exist for. So I paid $200 for a 1-hour consultation with a specialist in exactly this area. In that single hour, she walked me through a completely legal, fully compliant tax strategy that meant I did not have to pay that $30,000. I came out of that conversation $40,000 better off when you factor in her fee. $200 in, $40,000 saved. That is a return that no investment in the stock market is going to match. In a world where hard work is no longer a competitive advantage because almost everyone works hard, the actual competitive advantage is thinking expansively and connecting with the right people at the right moments. Your time and your ego are expensive. Other people's expertise is almost always cheaper than you think. The fourth principle I am keeping front of mind until I hit my goal is something called the slight edge. This comes from a book by Jeff Olson, and the core idea is this. Success and failure are both the result of small, simple things that you choose to do or choose not to do every single day. The difference between the person who builds wealth and the person who never quite gets there is rarely one big decision. It is the daily habits compounding over years. There is a thought experiment that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine two people. One gets handed a flat $1 million at the start of a month. The other gets a single penny on day one, but that penny doubles every day for 30 days. At first, the choice seems obvious. Take the million. But the person who chose the doubling penny ends up with over $5 million by day 30. That is compounding. And when you stretch that logic across years and decades, that is essentially what happens with money, with skills, with habits, with knowledge. The small choices you make today have long-term consequences that will eventually show up in your life in ways that feel sudden but have actually been building for years. I now try to remind myself constantly, what is uncomfortable now will become comfortable later. That is the whole principle in one sentence. The discomfort of investing instead of spending, the discomfort of waking up early to work on something that does not yet pay, the discomfort of saying no to things that feel good now but cost you later. All of that discomfort is just compounding in the right direction. The fifth thing is something I think about as leaning into your money-making superpower. I love this concept because it removes the idea that everyone has to build wealth the same way. Everyone has a unique combination of skills, knowledge, and experience that positions them to create value in a way that nobody else quite can. Most people never identify it. Some people identify it but do not lean into it hard enough. But it is there for everyone. For me, it came from spending nearly a decade inside investment banking. I sat in rooms where billion-dollar decisions were made. I learned how wealth actually operates at scale. Not the version of it that gets talked about in personal finance content, but the real mechanics of it. And I realized that most of the strategies the wealthiest people use to protect and grow their money are not secret. They are just not explained in plain language to people who do not already work in finance. That is the gap I am positioned to close. That is my superpower. And the moment I committed to leaning into it fully, everything accelerated. Yours might come from your upbringing, from something your parents built or taught you. It might come from skills you have spent years developing in your career. It might come from a passion or interest that you have pursued seriously enough to build real expertise. Whatever it is, find it, name it, and lean into it as hard as you can. The last thing, and this one sounds obvious, but is probably the most consistently underestimated thing on this entire list, is living below your means. Not forever, not in a joyless, deprive yourself of everything way, but strategically and intentionally during the years when the compounding effect of investing is at its most powerful. When I first started earning properly, I spent almost everything I made. Every bonus went on things I could not even tell you about 2 months later, material things, experiences I barely remember, lifestyle upgrades that did not make me meaningfully happier. And then I did the maths. I realized that if I kept going that way, I would get to my mid-30s, having worked for over a decade, and have almost nothing to show for it financially. That calculation changed my behavior more than any motivational content ever did. The key insight is this: you are not giving things up forever. You are making a strategic trade. I have wanted to buy a new car for a while. I looked at the numbers and realized that I barely drive. I commute by train. I take an Uber on weekends, and a car would cost me money in insurance, maintenance, depreciation, and either finance or a lease every single month. So I sold my last car and I am waiting. That decision alone saves me a significant amount every single month, which goes straight into investments. Eventually, those investments will generate enough cash flow to buy the car and all the other things without me having to choose between lifestyle and wealth. The goal is not to stay poor on paper. The goal is to use this window of time to build the kind of asset base that later buys you everything you want and then some. That is what getting to a million by 32 actually looks like from the inside. It is not one big move. It is these 6 things done consistently, over time, with patience. If this video resonated with you, subscribe. I post every week on investing, money management, and building real financial freedom. I will see you in the next one.